Alright guys, so we're back in my garage, and this week on the B58 Digest, we have two more topics we're going to discuss, so let's go ahead and hop into the video. So the first thing that we're going to discuss is what looks like new off-the-shelf maps that will be coming from boot mode, and what they did was they posted a couple teasers as well as dyno graphs just to kind of illustrate the new performance that we could expect from these updated maps. And I know a lot of people were kind of confused about who posted the numbers and how the connection with boot mode came together. So just keep in mind when you see posts from Peter, Peter is actually the owner at Pure Turbos in Europe. And there are a lot of relationships that are happening in the background with these tuning platforms and the different off-the-shelf maps that we see. So Peter actually owns Pure Turbos, and that's why the car in the picture has Pure Turbos, completely plastered across the side of the car, because it's basically their shop car. And he works very closely with HCP. And HCP is owned by Halim, and anybody that's a part of the boot mode community has seen Halim post as well. He is their primary tuner. So Halim owns HCP, does all of the tuning for Pure Turbos as well as for boot mode. And so in this case, he's basically using Peter's car as a testing development vehicle to develop new off-the-shelf maps. And Peter's car did used to have Pure Turbos on it. You guys probably saw it had like a built engine, intake manifold, everything they could throw at it to make it as fast as possible. But for this setup, he actually reverted it back to the stock turbo so that they could do a little more development work. All of that aside, most people are primarily focused on the numbers, and the biggest gains that we saw was on their 93 octane map, which they're saying is actually still designed for the stock high pressure fuel pump. And again, it was a little bit confusing for people because they didn't realize that the dyno they posted was in metric units, so it's not horsepower and foot-pounds, it's in PS and newton meters. So if you actually convert it, you'll see that their regular stage 2 pump gas map makes 460 wheel horsepower and 491 foot-pounds of torque. So a lot of people ask, how is this even possible? Especially on pump gas, we know that the car is primarily octane limited, so what are they doing to get past those limits? And I will say, for starters, you can see that flat torque curve. That to me indicates that they're basically riding the limits of the fuel pump. So they are basically pushing a lot of boost on pump gas in order to get these numbers. Now that makes me a little bit nervous just because I know that with our cars, if you push too much boost, you see a lot of timing corrections. And it might work really well for their setup if they have really good quality gas, but not everybody has that kind of gas. So for an OTS map, I am a little bit concerned, and if this is something that comes out soon, I hope you guys run a lot of logs just to make sure that it's working well for your specific setup. But still impressive nonetheless, they're making a lot of boost in order to hit the torque limits of the fuel pump, and then they allow it to ride out towards redline to make the 460 horsepower number. Now the next thing they showed was an update to the E30 Stage 2 Plus maps. So this one is designed for the TU pump. Again, you see a flat torque curve, but it's a little bit higher because the TU pump can support more boost. And then it also makes a lot more power. So now we're up to 501 wheel horsepower and 541 foot-pounds of torque. So of course these numbers are really impressive because if you're able to hit over 500 with just an OTS map, a lot of people are going to go that route. That's a big goal for a lot of people, just to hit 500s. And even though you need ethanol and an upgraded fuel pump, staying on the stock turbo, that makes it really, really attractive. Now, I think there are some people making around these numbers on a custom tune. So again, I don't doubt that it's not possible, but you'll want to do your own due diligence, run logs, and make sure that everything's safe for your specific setup. Now, the last one is more of a send it tune, and this one they actually designed for a Dodge Stage 2 high pressure fuel pump. So if you want to go a little bit more and get above the TU pump, of course you can make even more boost and even more torque. So on this dyno, they're making 513 wheel horsepower and 597 foot-pounds of torque. So almost 600 foot-pounds of torque with just a stock turbo, an upgraded fuel pump, and some ethanol. It's really crazy what they're able to push out of this. And I'm not sure if this is going to be an off-the-shelf map. If they have another Stage 2 Plus map just for like a Dodge Stage 2 or FX 180, I hope that doesn't make things too confusing because they already have a lot of off-the-shelf maps with Stage 2, Stage 2.0, Stage 2 Plus, but still impressive either way to see those kind of figures. So of course that's really good to see. I'm happy that they're going to be offering off-the-shelf maps that take advantage of all the power that's available. I just hope that they're not pushing too close to the limit because not everybody's going to have these same, good conditions, and that could put a lot of people in at dangerous situations. So again, no matter what tune you're running or who makes the tune, I highly recommend running your own logs, checking them every month or two, and just making sure that everything's still running well, because that'll be the best indicator that the tune is working well for you. So yeah, that's all they gave us for now. No real timeline or anything like that. It just looks like they had an opportunity to get Peter's car on the dyno and do a little more testing, and it looks like it's paying off. So keep your eyes out for potentially some new off-the-shelf maps in the future. Now, the other topic that I want to talk about is the Ptuned Shock Car that I have been sharing on my Instagram, and a lot of people have been asking me about it. And I have been following it for a little while because they posted it for the first time about a year ago, where they just kind of mentioned that they were getting a bare chassis to begin building a pro drag race car. And this car is set up for the X275 class. And I'll say it's in advance. Forgive me if I say anything wrong. I'm not huge on drag racing, so majority of the research and information I got on this has come really recently. So I'm just going to share with you what I know, and if anything needs to be corrected or whatever, feel free to leave a comment. But the X275 class is primarily limited by the tire size, and just like the name suggests, you can't run wider than a 275 radial. So that's to kind of level the playing field. And then after that, people have a lot more room to modify the car and make it as fast as possible on that 275 tire. So you'll see a lot of different engines, V6s, V8s, inline sixes. There are limitations on the size of a turbo that you can run, but you can run turbos, superchargers, nitrous, a lot of different options in how you want to make power. And people kind of approach it however they want, with whatever they think is best. And it just gives a lot of room for creativity after that point. So you can see what the P2uned car looks like, and they have been posting updates on it for the past year or so. Initially, like I said, they just got the bare chassis and they sent it out to, I guess, have everything checked over and just have it prepped. And then once they got it back in-house, they began doing their R&D and building it back up. So you can see the roll cage development, and it's a really intricate cage with a full hoop over the driver. And then eventually they really mocked everything up with the tires and got it all fitted up so that they could set up the drivetrain. Now this is going to have a very custom setup because it's still going to be powered by the B58, but pretty much everything after that is going to be aftermarket. So I think they mentioned that they're going to be running a TH400 or one of the aftermarket racing transmissions. And then they've also completely rebuilt the rear end. So it's got custom tubular arms and everything. Again, just a full custom setup so that they get all the adjustment that they need. They can dial in the weight transfer and get the car to launch properly and hold as much power as possible on that small of a tire. Then once they actually got the car back on the ground, they started setting up the actual engine. And this is where things got really exciting for me. So you can see they're actually relocating the turbo to the front of the car. So while they're driving, it can basically take in all of that fresh air and allow them to make as much power and boost as possible. Now, as far as the engine setup is concerned, they are ditching the direct injection and they are ditching the intake manifold with the integrated intercooler. But instead of going with an air-to-air intercooler, they are sticking with air-to-water, just a much bigger, beefier core. So you can see where that's going to be located, and you can see just how massive it is. So that should be able to hold a lot of power. They mentioned that they're actually shooting for around 2,000, which is insane. So again, just really excited to see this come together and see how well it performs next year. And then the cool thing about this weekend is they were at the Pri Show, and Pri stands for Performance Racing Industry. The easiest way to kind of understand what this show is, it's kind of like SEMA, except it's all geared towards racing. So all the cars that you see there will be kind of drag race cars, aftermarket performance parts and things like that. And so they did have the car there this weekend, and it looks like it's mostly fully assembled. They probably still have a couple odds and ends to finalize it, but the final engine bay setup is insane, and you can see kind of how the car is going to be sitting and set up. So it's really exciting to see this come together. Now, for me, I'm most excited about just the platform development as a whole because majority of what I'm looking at is just from the B58 standpoint. Usually when you see Supras moving like this, it just gets more and more people interested in supporting the aftermarket. And this kind of class, like I said, they make a lot of power, people making 1,500 to 2,000 plus. These are people running, 6-second quarter miles. So it's a completely different level of performance compared to what we're currently seeing with the other street cars and different records that have been broken recently. So getting this car into, a pro drag race series with all the LS cars, Hemi cars, the other two JZ cars and the other Supras, is really going to help put us on the map, get more attention to the platform, and show just what it's truly capable of. So yeah, I mean, this is their custom setup and their full kit, not something that you can just go and buy off the shelf, but still all of their development to make this happen is going to support us in the long run. For example, even just at the show, they're already getting attention from people. Even Larry Chen, who is a really big photographer, looks like he was getting some pictures of their car and might even do a feature on their car in the future as well. Maybe we'll see a YouTube video that goes over the car and just kind of different details about it. So yeah, I mean, that attention is big for us. So I'm just looking forward to next year when they get this car out to a couple events. Don't expect it to fly right away. Something like this takes a lot of time to dial in. And as you can imagine, a lot of the performance is built into the tune because they've got to make it hold as much power as possible on that small tire. But I know once they get it dialed in, this car will be really flying. So let's just keep an eye out and keep your fingers crossed that they're really successful next season. So that's all we have for this week. Thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any other news or updates that you want me to discuss, definitely reach out, send me a link, share all the information that you have, and I'll try to touch on that in the future. So if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.